Alright guys, I just wanted to review some components of argumentation and lines of reasoning in this video. There'll be a couple coming. So there's this one, we're going to talk about line of reasoning and the three types of argument. And then in the next one, we're going to talk about logical reasoning and argumentation from like everything from logic and syllogisms to logical fallacies and all of that. Okay, I would be giving you this lecture around this time anyway, so we might as well just do it online. Okay, so we have gone through this PowerPoint before. Logical or a line of reasoning is the set of reasons you use to reach a conclusion. Okay, so when we talk about logic, we set up premises that lead to a conclusion, and that's what argumentation is. And then it also is a course of reasoning that is a methodical process that shows logic. Okay, and when we talk about it in the context of our writing, it needs to be intentional. The order should be intentional in a way that makes sense. It's a rhetorical and a stylistic choice, and you shouldn't be able to move the body paragraphs around. So if you guys remember when I had you guys do reverse outlining, and it's like all of our least favorite things to do. But what I'm having you do is trace their line of reasoning, and you should see, okay, like there's a reason this paragraph is here because it addresses this main idea and is this kind of support. There's a reason there's a concession and refutation here because it needs to be the middle paragraph, not the first, not the last, right? It needs to be intentional. You shouldn't be able to move the body paragraphs around without it messing up your line of reasoning and affecting your argument. So if you just have all of your supports in a random order, then you're not really considering line of reasoning. And if you do not connect back to your thesis, if you use illogical statements or logical fallacies or overstatements or overgeneralizations or just plain untrue things, that's bad line of reasoning. And if they're not organized with intention, okay? And so it's really important that you guys get into the habit of outlining and developing your thesis before you start writing. And I just posted a video that walks you through that process on Schoology today, and it is underneath Resources and Argument Q3, and it is this right here. Okay, and then this PDF also gives you some slides on the anatomy of the Q3, and I'm going to go over that in another video as well. All right, so back to line of reasoning. To ensure that you have a clear line of reasoning, be thinking very critically about your main ideas. Okay, so as I'm reading an argument prompt, I might jot down my supports and my ideas, and then I'm going to number them and say, okay, like this one is the most effective for the first one. This one's most effective for the second one. I think my concession refutation needs to be the second to last paragraph, and I'm going to end with my strongest point, right? You need to have an understanding of the rhetorical situation in order to figure out what order things go. That's why we start the year with rhetorical analysis. So we understand that rhetorical triangle and the interaction between the three components of rhetoric, right? Speaker, audience, and or speaker, subject, and audience. We understand the way that we interact with those things when we're engaging in a rhetorical situation, because that's going to determine the order of our subclaims, our supports, our main ideas. You want to use transitional words and phrases. Don't just use first, second, third. It's really important that you consider using words that show the connection between your ideas, right? So in a concession refutation, a common one is on the other hand, or like alternatively, right? So if you look at this list that's linked to this PowerPoint, there are additive, adversative, causal, and sequential, okay? And we need to consider, okay, like is my second main point an additive support, or is it an adversative support? Am I contradicting something that I said earlier? Is it causal, if this, then that, or is it simply sequential? First we do this, then we do that, right? So if you are, for example, addressing how we might let's say the prompt was determining what factors should be considered in erecting a memorial. Okay, and that's one of the synthesis prompts, okay? And we know synthesis is argument. We might have some adversative transition words that discuss, for example, the issues that many have taken with certain Civil War and like potentially problematic historical figures, right? So, like, for example, there was a controversy about the Theodore Roosevelt statue that has an African and a Native American tribal chief standing on either side of him while he's on a horse, right? What do we do with that memorial? We have some adversative transitions, right? Then maybe we have some causal transitions where we talk about the cause and effect of putting a memorial in a certain place where maybe it's the wrong audience, right? We're making sure that the relationship between our lines of reasoning are transitioned to with words that fit the context, right? We know very clearly what our rhetorical situation is, so we use words that fit that rhetorical situation, okay? They should, right here, show the relationship within a paragraph between the main idea and the support the author is giving, okay? So here are a list of additive. So if you're indeed or further, or not only this, but that, on the other hand, not to mention, additionally, okay? An introduction to a particular support for your main idea. So if you were saying that many people take issue with Civil War monuments because they seem to glorify particularly and significantly racist portion of our past, right? You would use notably the statue of blah, blah, blah. Or as an illustration, we can look at the monument of so-and-so. Reference, similarity, identification, clarification, these are very effective. That is to say, when we're arguing, we want to be very clear, right? So we state our ideas, and we say it again in another sentence at the end. That is to say, and then we restate our claim, right? That is to say that we need to be considering the cultural implications on our audience of the institution of these memorials. Okay. Then there are adversative, causal, so cause and effect. If we're setting up a section of our argument that is cause and effect, these are effective. If we are qualifying something, we use conditional transition words. So we utilize GMO in our global food supply in a prominent way, provided that there is effective testing done or effective labeling on those products. Okay. Sequential, we use these a lot. Subsequently is a lot better than secondly, right? Thirdly is kind of boring, right? So we want to try to use words that don't feel too informal or conversational. So for example, to get back to the point is one that usually means that you have gotten off the point in the first place. So we don't want to like acknowledge that, okay? Not in formal writing anyway. Okay? That is linked to this PowerPoint, so make sure that you use those to your advantage. Some of you are really good at this, and others of you are just kind of leaning back on transitional words that just feel like they sound okay, rather than words that highlight the relationship between the evidence and your line of reasoning. Connecting your reasonings and evidence to your thesis in each paragraph is really important. That usually happens at the beginning in that first topic sentence and at the very end when you're transitioning to your next idea. And this video ideally should play for you. I don't think you need an account. It could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think you don't need an account to actually watch the video. You would just need it to get the teaching notes. This kind of helps you understand connecting the evidence and support to your topic sentence. And then this was the practice that we would have done in class. But in lieu of that, I want you to go ahead and use the video resources that I've uploaded for you so you can more fully understand line of reasoning. And the last thing I want to talk about with this particular video, that's my son making lots of noise. This website is really great. It is a writing lab, a college writing lab, and it breaks down Toulmin, Aristotelian or classical, and Rogerian arguments. So if we go back to the first part here, organizing your argument, we see that there's Toulmin, Rogerian, and classical or Aristotelian. Okay. One thing to note, okay, The Toulmin method was originally developed to analyze arguments, and so when we do a rhetorical analysis, what you guys are generally doing is called the Toulmin method of argumentation, because you're analyzing someone else's argument. We can use that in our own arguments as well, or we can lean back on a Rogerian model or a classical model. Most of us fall under classical because that feels more natural, and we're going to talk about what those things look like. So first, the Toulmin. The Toulmin method is essentially a structure for analyzing arguments, but we can also utilize components of this style in our own argumentation. It's clear, it's structured, and so it makes sense for those of us who are particularly, we need that structure in place in order to stay focused. Okay, there are 6 elements for analyzing and or arguing and presenting arguments. Okay, and they are the claims, the grounds, the warrant, the backing, the qualifier, and the rebuttal. This sounds like a lot, but what we end up seeing when we talk about a Toulmin the infographic here, the claim is a statement of opinion, so that's your thesis, your argument. The grounds are the supports, the facts or data or reasoning upon which your claim is based. Okay? The warrant is what links the grounds or the support and the evidence to your claim. Okay? The backing gives additional support for the claim by addressing different questions. Okay, so this is your commentary. So the grounds, your evidence, the backing, your commentary, the warrant, your commentary and line of reasoning. The qualifier limits your claim in some way. So if you are qualifying an argument or presenting an if this, then we need to consider that. So for the GMO problem, for example, you might say GMO should serve an integral part of our global food supply so long as ... These conditions are met. That's a qualifier. And then the rebuttal. This is your concession and refutation. So this is what you guys have already been doing. Okay. We don't call them the claims, the grounds, the warrant, the backing, the qualifier, the rebuttal. Okay. The claims, as I said, for example, there should be more laws to regulate texting while driving in order to cut down on dangerous car accidents. Very clear, concise, specific claim. Okay, let's say we were writing an essay about that. The grounds then are the facts, the data, and the reasoning, the supports upon which the claim is based, the facts for the case. So the National Safety Council estimates that 1.6 million car accidents per year are caused by cell phone use and texting. That's facts. Okay, that is a statistic. The warrant links the grounds back to the claim, right? So just like in a rhetorical or literary analysis, we're connecting things back to our thesis, right? It makes the audience understand how the grounds are connected to supporting the claim. Sometimes the warrant is implicit, but I want you to make yours explicit. I want that line of reasoning clear, okay? Because for the purposes of these particular arguments, you are writing for an audience that wants clarity, not ambiguity. Okay? And our understanding of the rhetorical situation is a clear argument. There is no room for ambiguity. Okay? So, for example, an example of a warrant in this particular case would be being distracted by texting on a cell phone while driving a car is dangerous and causes accidents. Okay? So that's why there should be more laws to regulate texting in order to cut down on those dangerous car accidents. The backing gives additional support for the claim. So if we're talking about more laws to regulate texting, what does that look like in a practical sense? The backing is going to tell us that what you mean by that is greater fines and more education about the consequences. Okay? That's what it looks like to have more regulation or more accountability. The qualifier, it limits the claim or pays tribute to the complexity of the issue. Okay? They add strength to claims because they make sure your audience knows that you get that it's not a simple black and white issue. Okay? There should be more laws to regulate texting while driving in order to cut down on some of the dangerous car accidents that happen each year. Okay? And then the rebuttal is when the author addresses the opposing views.